Hello, this is Italian Swords, and this is a terrible sword. Let's talk about that. This is the 1871 Italian Cavalry Officers Sword, and it has a straight pipe-back blade, although many had sabre blades, and this example is made in about 1890 by Clemen and Jung in Solingen, and it has a couple of problems. For those of you subscribed to Matt Easton of Scholar Gladiatoria, you may have watched his video on the 1821 British Infantry Officer's Sabre, which you can see here. This sword also has a pipe-back blade, and it shares many of the same issues. Pipe-back blades have a few common problems, which get worse the narrower the blade is. The 1821 has a blade width of about 2.5 centimeters, and as you can see, it's fairly flexible. This example is stiffer than the average one, but you get the idea. Pipe-back blades have this distinctive quill on the back, a very fine edge, and are almost always very flexible. This makes them poor for thrusting. There are many accounts from the Crimean War where officers, using this, were unable to thrust into overcoats, like this, as the blade was simply too flexible to pierce. As I said before, pipe-back blades have a few problems, and they get worse the narrower the blade is. The 1871 features an even daintier blade, being only about 2 centimeters at the ricasso and tapering to about 1 centimeter in the foible. You'd think after all the issues of the Crimean War, sword designers would smarten up a bit and stop making pipe-back blades, but history decided to repeat itself. The 1871 is even daintier than the 1821 before it, and it's absolutely useless in the thrust and the cut. As you can see, it has a very slim blade with absolutely no meat to provide cutting power, and, being so extremely flexible, couldn't penetrate even the standard coat of an enemy soldier. This dainty blade is actually about as flexible as many training swords. Here we have a cast steel economy line small sword, and you can see it's actually stiffer than the 1871 Italian sword. It's not all bad though. The 1871 actually has a very clever guard. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but there's actually a small recess here in the guard for placing your thumb when held in sabre grip, which helps with aligning the point. This would actually be a very useful feature if you could kill anyone with this sword, but it's too flexible to offer any sort of offensive capabilities. This innovation was brought by Capitano Settimo del Frate, an Italian designer, and was first seen in this pattern of sword. As it stands, this design is whimsically ineffective, with its extremely flexible blade and absolute lack of any cutting authority. Not all Italian 1871s are quite so terrible. Some have slightly beefier blades, being about 2 centimeters for most of their width, but they are still very flexible swords. Some of them may have been usable as offensive weapons, however it was all too common to find flexible examples like this. It could be argued by the end of the 19th century that the heyday of the cavalry sword had come and gone, with the introduction of repeating cartridge firearms being just around the corner. But, as you'll see by the Crimean War, which was only about 12 years earlier, swords were still used in combat in the late 19th century. In summary, this is useless. It's too flexible to thrust, too light and dainty to cut, and while the hand is very protective, and that means your opponent won't be able to chop off your fingers, it won't matter because you can't kill him. This is Italian Swords, and I hope today's video was to the point.